created a new government, a government without a king. And you know, when I was wandering around the inside of the sanctuary, there's a little thing over there that says no kings. It took a few tries, but eventually these men decided upon 3 branches of government with laws made by an elected body, laws carried out by an elected leader, and judges to make sure that the laws that everyone makes and carries out are fair. And we lived happily ever after. Okay, so this is a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale we're told about our founding. And you know, parts of it are true. Even the parts in Hamilton, some of those are true. But we are taught that we escaped tyranny for liberty, we the people. And we kind of assume that the people means all of us. Well, the truth always is, it's a little bit messier and more detailed. For example, when you look at the writers of the Constitution, you will see that they are all male and they're all of European descent. And although the language of the Constitution itself does not directly rule out the participation of females in government, it does state that a representative must be an inhabitant of the state in which he shall be chosen. He shall be chosen. Okay, so at the time, he was considered the default when the gender of the subject of a sentence is unknown. However, considering the culture of the time, when they said he, I'm pretty sure they meant he. And you know, slavery is actually built into the Constitution, although I did hear that there was a Welsh drafter of the Constitution who was furiously trying to get it written out. He did not succeed. But for example, not Welsh, Scottish. He was from Edinburgh. For example, Article 1, Section 9 talks about the importation of people and how Congress may not make a law prohibiting it for the next 20 years. Also, Article 4, Section 2 says that enslaved people who escape from bondage must be returned to their captors. And also there are specific mention of Indian nations that exclude them from citizenship if they're not paying taxes. For example, Article 1, Section 2 directs that Indians not taxed be excluded from the census. And people who are excluded from the census are denied representation in our representative government. So we've often heard that the Constitution is a living document, which means it's flexible enough to change with the times. And if you've ever gone back and read like one of the annotated constitutions that's available on the government websites, I found one at constitution.congress.gov. The Fifth Amendment, the amendment that guarantees equal protection, is annotated with a line that says, "Our whole system of law is predicated on the general, fundamental principle of the equality of application of the law." However, in order to ensure that application of the law being equal, we needed to add the 14th Amendment in 1866 after the Civil War. That 14th Amendment states, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state in which they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction equal protection under the laws." So this will surely be enough to guarantee that all people will be treated equally, right? The truth is that our laws are only as powerful as the people and the institutions that we entrust to uphold them. And that protection offered by the 14th Amendment feels just that much less comprehensive following that 5-4 Supreme Court decision that just came out recently. So now I'm going to tell you a story. When I first moved into my house, there was a stand of poison ivy growing up the wall next to the basement door. And I ignored it. You know, I should have bought a goat. Apparently goats can eat poison ivy, but I didn't. I just, poison ivy, it's a hardy plant. This particular stand had been allowed to grow for so long that some of those vines were like as thick as my fingers. It would not be easy to take down. But one morning, I was standing in my kitchen, looking out into my backyard, and I saw this little spine of green snaking out of the woodwork and into the kitchen. The ivy was no longer an outdoor problem. It's creeping into my house. So that Saturday, I gathered some big black trash bags and I put on long pants and a long sleeve t-shirt and thick gardening gloves with thin little rubber gloves underneath. And piece by piece, I stripped all the ivy off the wall. And poison ivy is a climbing plant. So it has these little roots, and the roots search out the imperfections in your wall, and they dig in and hold on. So as I'm pulling down the ivy, I'm also pulling down pieces of the outside of my house. It had grown under my siding. Even though I tried to ease those vines through really, really gently, I'm still pulling out chunks of insulation and like cracking all of I had metal siding at the time, and that metal siding was like getting bent. And I'm going, no, really, really gently, really gently. But you know what? At the end of the day, I triumphed over the ivy. I filled a bunch of big black contractor bags, and I tied them really tightly and left them to cook in the sun, because you can't just put that out in your compost bin unless you want to never be able to touch your compost again. But tearing out that poison ivy did not leave me unscathed. No, I am not one of those people who's not allergic. My mother-in-law somehow is not allergic. I'm really allergic. Even though I had protected myself as best I could, wearing the aforementioned long gloves and long sleeves and long pants, I still had that Arusha oil all over myself, my wrists and in my clothing, and that shower that I took with the special poison ivy soap that's supposed to help, it just spread it around. Yeah, so I got blisters on my stomach, on my arms, on my legs. It's not my favorite, but I didn't have to go to the ER, so. So why'd I tell that story? When I think of our beautiful United States of America, I think of inequality as poison ivy that's growing up into our house. It was there at the founding, but our founders took its presence for granted. They let it grow unchecked until it grew up between the window frames and damaged the walls and the foundation and infiltrating the insulation and hurting everyone it touched. And in April of 1861, our nation did a big clean, and they tore it all out and they pulled it all down, and the battle was long and hard fought, and almost 620,000 lives, as far as we know, there could have been more, were sacrificed. But by May of 1865, our house was saved. But you know that thing about poison ivy? You can cut down all the vines, but unless you dug up the roots, that plant's gonna come back. So for 100 years, we ignored the poison ivy that was growing up around us, both in the north and in the south. For 100 years, we let that poison hurt everyone it touched. And then once again, about 50 years, little more than 50 years ago, 60 years ago, we looked up and we noticed that our beautiful house, our United States of America, had once again been overrun with poison ivy. And we sang "We Shall Overcome" as we tore down those vines. And we marched and we demonstrated and we staged sit-ins and boycotts, and we fulfilled our founders' promise of liberty and justice for all. Once again, we prevailed. But the roots still remain. I was not alive when my house was built. It's older than me. I was not there when the poison ivy took root under that basement window. Poison ivy's not my fault. But once I bought the house, it became my responsibility, and any damage it caused became mine to fix. None of us was alive 250 years ago at the founding of the United States, unless one of you is a vampire. We did not choose to build our country on blood and bones. The sins of our forefathers are not our fault. But we live in this country now. We've inherited both the high ideals and the damage. And shaming one another over a past we have no control over doesn't help us to move on to a better future. In Kelsey Yandura's 2019 article for Rewire, she references psychologist Mary Lamia's work when she says, "Shame is only effective in changing behavior when it's followed up by an opportunity to learn from the mistake. Without an opportunity for recovery, shamed individuals are left with a small but dangerous armada of defense mechanisms: withdrawal, avoidance, and inflicting harm on themselves and others." Lamia suggests that instead of shaming people, we can open a dialogue with them. Now, I know it is much harder to react to an offense with vulnerability and an attempt to understand someone than it is to react with hurt and anger. But just think what kind of world we could live in if we expected one another, and maybe not just individuals, but maybe if we expected our institutions and our governments to adhere to the notion of treating everyone with compassion. I look out across our country, especially yesterday when you could see all those fireworks going up from, if you were at a high place, you could see them all across, one after another, even during the rainstorm. Our house was the first to be built upon the premise that we are all born with inalienable human rights. At our semi-sesquicentennial, our country is more just and more fair than it was at our founding. But it doesn't mean our work is done. Just as in early generations, we determined that the Fifth Amendment was not enough to ensure justice was applied evenly. So we added a 14th Amendment, and then a 15th Amendment in 1870, and then a 19th Amendment in 1920, and a 24th Amendment in 1964. And you know what all of those amendments say? Voting is a right that shall not be denied or abridged, and everyone has equal protection under the law. So we're not always living up to the words of our founders. We haven't secured the blessings of liberty for all of our citizens. Our justice is still employed a little unevenly. We're still dealing with that ivy. But you know what? We are dealing with it. As Representative John Lewis said, there are still forces in America that want to divide us along racial lines or religious lines or sex or class, but we've come too far. We've made too much progress to stop or pull back. We must go forward, and I believe we'll get there. I too believe we'll get there. But we won't get there by sowing more division. We can't pull out the poison ivy of oppression only to replace it with the poison oak of shame. Pulling poison ivy is hard and uncomfortable. And sometimes it's easier to tell yourself, "Oh, that was Virginia creeper. That's not poison ivy." And sometimes it's easier to say, "Well, leaves of 3, don't step on it." They might feel careless. Or sometimes it's easier to say, "Oh, it's just a few little leaves. They only cause a tiny little rash. It's not worth bothering anyone over." It's easier to tell yourself, "You know what? I don't have the long sleeves and the black trash bags right now, but I'll come back tomorrow. I'll have them later." It's easier to tell yourself, "Oh, the next person who sees it, they'll be prepared. They'll take care of it." But as Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address, it is for us, the living, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work. And that work goes on. So I'd like to end with a prayer. Spirit of life and love, Give us the wisdom to see the poison ivy of division, the courage to take it out, the compassion to care for all those who are hurt by it, and the love of justice to see it through. Blessed be.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well played. And now it's come a time for generosity. But before we go on, I would be remiss if I didn't say a special thank you to our guest today. Where's your name? Emily Quarels. Thank you. Okay, so now we ask for your generosity in this collection. Open your hearts and your pockets, and the collection will now be gratefully accepted. Hands up. Who's visiting us for the first time today? Nobody? Okay, so now we come to a very sacred part of our worship, the stones of joys and sorrows. There are a lot of things happening in this country and in the world. If anyone has a joy in their heart, a celebration, please come forward and place a stone in our stone garden. In the same sense, if you have a heartache, please come up and we'll put all our prayers, joys, and sorrows in this sand garden. Please come up now.
So for our prayer today, I actually brought words by Maureen Killoran. It's for July 4th. She calls it the July 4th meditation. Spirit of life and love, I come before you, black and brown and red and yellow and alabaster. I come longing for the simpler days that were truly never our lot. And I am an American. I hear these voices as in the complexity of our days. I am humanist and Christian and Muslim and Jew, pagan and atheist, Buddhist and you, and I am an American. I'm one who fought for my country, and I am at the same time one who protested war, and I'm an American. Amongst the division of our days, I've struggled in poverty, and I've accepted the profits of wealth, and I'm an American. I'm an owner of weapons, and I'm one who would control our nation's guns by limiting the who's and the what's and the how's, and I'm an American. As light is shown on our divisions, I live with the often unacknowledged privilege, and I am moved to rage at the complexity of intersecting oppressions. And I'm American. In the challenge of our days, I'm one who supports my country, right or wrong, and I am one who claims the traditions of dissent, and I'm an American. In this polarized season, I'm a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, an Independent, green, and plain confused. And I'm an American. Spirit of hope, sit with us in our diversities. Help us hear one another in our divisions. Grant that, beginning in this community, we may honor one another's truths. We may know that a just and faithful tomorrow begins here in our hearts. For with all our problems, with all our pain, with all our limitations, with all our mistakes, we are all Americans. And now Lillian will lead the affirmation of faith.
The affirmation is found in the cover of your gray hymnals. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ofrenda. Este es nuestro gran pacto, el convivir unidos en paz, el buscar la verdad en amor y ayudarnos unos a los otros. And right in the back of this, the announcements for today, every Sunday, even though we're in summer, we've prepared a special service and we'd like you to come, especially next week, the 12th. There's a ice cream social after, so hey. But please check this and then please come. And now I invite you to coffee hour right downstairs for fellowship, to get to know each other better. What is our closing song? The closing song is 168 in the hymnal. Please join us in body or spirit and sing loudly and joyfully.
You may rise in body or spirit as you're able. It's kind of loud. Number 168, one more step.
Till there is peace.
right, and our closing words, our benediction today, they're by Barbara Cheatham. And now we take our leave. Before we gather here again, may each of us bring happiness into another's life. May we each be surprised by the gifts that surround us. May we each be enlivened by constant curiosity. And may we remain together in spirit till the hour we meet again. Amen, shalom, salam, blessed be, and please join me in listening to the postlude.